Good morning. Hope you're doing well. I'm doing quite well myself. If you're watching this, there's a good chance, like me, you're a millennial, born in the 80s or 90s. And if that's the case, you saw an incredible wave of technology. And it felt so good every year to have something come out that felt like it was genuinely going to improve your life. From the internet to cell phones and smartphones to all the different types of consumer goods that were connected in new interesting ways, even the great video game consoles of the 90s and 2000s, where it seems like graphics were getting better every time and planes were moving faster and everything was going in the right direction. But recently it doesn't really feel like that, does it? At least for me, it feels like technology has reached a point where it's not supporting the culture, it's actually eroding the culture. But I'm not the first one to think about this. In a 1996 lecture, a professor named Neil Postman, well, he presented a very interesting argument. In his argument, he said that culture was essentially on the verge of surrendering to technology, or maybe it already had. In fact, the title of this speech was called The Surrender of Technology, or The Surrender of Culture to Technology. He called this technopoly. And in that lecture, he laid out 7 points, 7 questions rather, that you can ask yourself as someone who, well, let's face it, you are invested in technology. Even if you don't have money on the market, you're invested in technology because you use it every day. It greatly affects the life of you and those around you, and you want it to go well. Otherwise, it's going to affect you negatively. And Postman urged us to critically question and to, with a discerning intention, look at technology and ask, just because it's new and shiny and powerful, is it actually benefiting us? Is it affecting us positively? And what should we do about it? So I'm going to lay out Postman's 7 questions for you, and I want to frame these in the context of AI. You're going to be able to use these questions to build a sharper discernment and understanding of the technology that's happening around us and make better decisions for yourself. And if you see me look over here, just because I have some notes here from his speech. So here are 7 questions. The first question that Postman asks is, what is the problem to which this technology supposedly solves? Well, look, when AI started to become commercially available in 2022, it was shown that it could do all these fancy things, all these amazing things. It could write for us, it could organize for us, it could calculate for us, it could, and what could it do in the future? So many things were on the horizon. But nobody asked for this technology. And I could largely say that the majority of people didn't actually want the technology, but it was given to us, and so we started to use it. But what problem does it solve? I mean, let's take the cell phone, for example. I'm talking to you right now on an iPhone. It's a really nice phone. iPhone 11, I think. It's very old. It's an old one now. I'm talking to you on this phone, and the phone itself, the telephone itself, was a massive leap forward in human communication and culture. The landlines of long, long ago that crisscrossed different countries, especially the US being one of the forerunners of that technology, that really changed the world. It changed our culture. So technology was a huge leap. Telephoning was a huge leap. And then from the telephone, many, many decades later, I mean, almost 100 years later, if you really think about it, 100 plus years later, ish, I have to look at the exact dates, late 1800s, early 1900s to, let's call it 1990s, so 70, 80 years, something like that. The cell phone then came out. The cell phone was an even bigger jump, even bigger, because now we not only had long distance communication, but we also had mobility. You could put it in your pocket. Now that's another big leap. And so then another couple decades comes along, and the cell phone's here. Now, the problem that the telephone solved was we couldn't talk to people at a distance conveniently. The problem that the phone solved was that we couldn't talk to people at a distance easily. The problem that the cell phone solved was that we couldn't do it readily on our person. But the smartphone didn't really solve a big additional problem outside of those first 2 innovations, telephone itself and cell phone itself. Whether it's the brick cell phone or the flip phone, that solved a big problem. The smartphone, with apps and with internet access, didn't really solve a problem, but it arrived, and now it's here. And so we have to then contend with what that means in culture. But although we couldn't live without it now, or we feel like we couldn't live without it, no one was clamoring for it before it came out, the smartphone that is. And of course, famously, Henry Ford would say, well, if I asked people what they would have wanted, they would have said faster horses. And this is true. But even that mentality speaks to the worldview of capitalism, which is that we always want to have more stuff to buy to make our lives more convenient. And it just goes to show that most of the things that you interact with nowadays don't solve a real problem. They might create new problems, but they don't really solve a real problem. They're just methods of trying to make our lives more convenient, to distract us even in some ways. Now, I'm not trying to detract from some of these things. I'm just trying to bring awareness to the fact that you didn't ask for AI. Let's look at AI now. You didn't ask for it. It doesn't really solve the problem. For the average consumer, for a researcher who's trying to cure cancer, which is what AI was supposedly supposed to be doing with OpenAI and Altman, and now it's totally the opposite direction. There's research, and there's scientific, and there's great educational use. But for the average consumer, it doesn't solve a problem. And that's the question that Postman would ask first. What is this actually even doing? Second question Postman would ask, who will benefit from it and who will pay for it? Simple enough. Well, the party line of this is that you'll benefit from it. You'll benefit because it will make your life better. But I'll ask you this, who's going to pay for it? Well, you're going to pay for all of it. You're going to pay with your money, first through the tax system, which governments fund private sector technology. I mean, even if you look at the advent of, like, let's say GPS, GPS, at least from my understanding, was created by the US Navy. You could argue with me about this, but the core point is truth. It was created by the US Navy, like modern GPS, and it was part of the Google program to create Google Maps, right? And so the government funded this, the Pentagon funded this, and then it later became consumer technology. So for the government to have funded that, if you're in the US, that came from your tax dollars. So you paid for a private company in collaboration with the government to develop a consumer technology. And then when the consumer technology comes out, you also pay for that. So you're double paying. As a consumer, you're paying for a technology that you already paid to develop as a citizen. Now, who will benefit from it? Well, you'll supposedly benefit from it, but who benefits more? A question worth asking. Who will benefit from it? Who will pay for it? Postman's third question, what new problems will be created by solving the old problems? Well, lots. Just in the vein of AI, AI displaces humans who live in the areas where those data centers are located. AI displaces the workforce for people who get replaced by AI, even though I think that's going to be a massive backfire in the coming future. There are all these ramifications for the normal human, which will massively affect how we live our lives, and new problems are created by solving old problems. I love this example. When you think about power windows on cars, when I was a kid, we had windows you had to roll down with a crank, right? And nobody asked for power windows, but then they came. And now power windows, if they break, you have to get special motors to fix them. Let's say, God forbid, you go over a bridge. Pattern interrupt. I had to switch locations because the sun was getting weird. God forbid you fall off a bridge in your car with your electric windows, and now you can't roll the window down to get out of the water, right? Because the electric motor doesn't work underwater. Now, there might be maybe too much pressure on the inside of the window to roll it down with the crank, but the point I'm trying to make is electronic components create a problem. They create a problem that wasn't there before. Lots of technology does this. AI certainly creates a lot of problems that weren't there before. I mean, Yeah, I just keep coming back to the environmental factor, man. Like, there's just so much damage that's being done to the environment, and it didn't need to be done. But now that AI is definitely happening, the environmental impact will happen, and there's nothing that you and I can really do about it. I mean, outside of not using the technology, but that's just like saying to people, oh, well, just if you don't like the internet, don't use it. It's like, okay, well, if you don't like highways, don't use them. If you don't like, if you don't like, if you don't like soap, don't use it. It becomes an essential part of society, and then if you don't use it, you're left out. So yeah, new problems are created. And I just changed what my notes are. Postman also asks us his fourth question, which people or institutions will most seriously be harmed by the technology? Well, look, it's always haves and have-nots, and the people who don't have the resources will be the ones who are subjected to the negative impacts of the technology as it grows. Look at the data centers that go into communities and they cause health issues with those communities, COPD, asthma, probably cancer down the road. Look at the different types of jobs which will be displaced by the technology, by AI. These are all things that affect people who have fewer resources, and they don't really touch people who have more resources, because if you're making the technology, then you're not going to be necessarily affected in the same way than if you're just using the technology. All of these billionaires have the resources to stay away from the plants, stay away from the harmful effects. They're not going to get laid off. They're not going to be affected by it. You might, though. Interesting. Postman also asks as his fifth question, what changes in language will come as a result of the technology? We know AI is making us stupider. I mean, it's supposed to make humanity smarter, but I think it's making individuals stupider. The more that we allow AI to do our thinking for us, do our talking for us, do our writing for us, the less capable we become of animating those faculties in ourselves. And it's really showing already. Look at all the slop that's coming out from AI. All writing now, it seems like, on the internet, within a period of 2 years, has become AI. It really shows. And it's dumbing us down, and it's not allowing us to practice the effort of communication. And let me tell you, it's making all the writing that I'm reading a lot more boring. But it's changing how we talk with each other. It's changing how we speak. It's also reducing even more the amount of patience we have for people to get their message out. We can't even stand to watch a 30-second clip anymore, and AI is accelerating that. So technology always changes language to a certain extent. Again, I want you to think, when you think about these questions, it's not necessarily just a condemnation of AI. It's more of like just a realistic appraisal of how technology affects everything, and whether all new technology is a positive improvement for humanity. I would say it's not. And we should think about whether it is or not. Postman's sixth question, what sort of people or institutions will acquire special political power because of this technology? Well, political power isn't about political parties, it's just about control. So we know that AI is going to create, and already is creating, the opportunity for massive surveillance of citizens. We know that it's creating the opportunity for politicians to weaponize drones, and I mean, God, it's insane. Who really wants to live in a world where a government body can send a drone and just take someone out? I don't want to be a part of that. If you want to come get me, come find me. Don't send a drone. Yeah, so I mean, political power is going to be taken by parties left, right, and center, and it's going to be AI will be a main tool. Even if you think about CBDCs, which are central bank digital currencies, that's going to be combined with AI and blockchain, crypto, to create control. Political parties are going to create control. Postman's last question, what alternate uses might be made of this technology? There are always alternate uses for technologies, good and bad. When I look at, for instance, the pharmaceutical industry, you think about how Ozempic was originally a medicine for diabetes, and now it's being used as weight loss. It's very popular, very profitable. And what long-term effects will come from millions and millions of people using Ozempic for weight loss? Well, we're already seeing some class action suits, gastro paralysis and different types of weird problems that it's causing, maybe only in a few people, but it's causing them. And alternate use of technology always has side effects. What alternate uses for AI will be developed, and how will those alternate uses have positive or negative side effects? There could be positives to this as well. But these are the questions we need to be asking. So whenever you're thinking about technology, it's not just, oh, this new technology is great and now I have to use it because it's the next new thing. We should be analyzing what's coming into our world because we want to practice discernment. In his book, Amusing Ourselves to Death, this is Postman's book that he wrote in the late 80s, early 90s. This was just at the dawn of the internet. He said that there are two potentials for where the world is going. Some people think that it's going in the 1984 direction. So that's George Orwell's famous book. In George Orwell's famous book, he basically talked about Big Brother and how Big Brother was a surveillance state and it kept humanity under its boot. And it subjected us to control through technology. It was very evil in that way. But then there's Aldous Huxley's view from A Brave New World, which essentially is numbing ourselves into submission. Because in Huxley's world, there was this thing called soma, which is essentially a drug, and you drink it, and all your problems go away, and you're completely sedated and happy and numb. And isn't that what's happening right now, even as you watch me on YouTube, and you scroll on Instagram, and you watch Netflix, and you just relax. You amuse yourself to death. And because that's happening, you don't think about what's actually going on. I mean, think about how numb we are as a culture now. Millennials and down, millennials, Gen Z, and everyone after us. Think about how numb we are to the most egregious things. I mean, Donald Trump can get on Twitter or whatever and say, I'm going to murder 90 million people if Iran doesn't do this. And we kind of look at that and go, oh, this guy's at it again, but we don't take it seriously. I was joking with a friend this morning that the state of our culture, millennials could be on the way to the gas chamber in the Holocaust, and we'd be memeing it and making jokes about it all the way into the showers. Because we don't take anything seriously anymore, even the most serious stuff, which is a coping mechanism, because I think deep down, we believe that it's gonna get worse before it gets better, if it does get better. And we're just hoping to stay along for the ride and get what we can while we're here. YOLO. YOLO, as a wise man once said. So this video really isn't about criticizing technology or even AI as much as it is calling you to be more discerning. And I posed to you 7 questions that Postman asked us in the early 90s. And just the internet and the television were the things that were amusing us to death and distracting us. But now we're much further down that path. And you have to ask yourself, what role is technology playing in your life? And do you need to adopt everything that happens because it's new, everything that's invented because it's new? And what are the effects of it on society and on your life personally, if you do? That's it. That's all I got for you today. If you like this, leave a comment, and in case I don't see you, good afternoon, good evening, and good night.